So I've been working on this game for quite a while now, and honestly, it's been frustrating. The feedback has been really scarce, and it makes me wonder, am I just bad at showing what the game actually has to offer, or does it genuinely have no appeal? Anyway, I decided to take a break from it for a couple weeks and stumbled across the suit painted by Andrew Grant Kurtis, and I thought, can I make a scene in Godot that looks like this? This project became more extensive than I expected, so I had to divide it in 3 videos. Part 1 will cover the scene setup and the sky shader. Let's get started. First thing I did was to create a plane in Blender and subdivide it multiple times. Then I added the painting to serve as a guide. Started sculpting the mountains, comparing the geometry to the picture, but not trying to make it perfect. And when I was happy with the result, into Godot it went. I had to get it back to Blender as I noticed the islands were too small when I placed the water plane. But now we're good to go. I decided to start by importing my custom sky shader from my game Sepulchrum. And after tweaking it a little bit, I got almost where I wanted. So without further ado, let's see how the shader works. Create a new shader, add an environment node to your scene, and under its sky dropdown, add your shader as a shader material. This is the first part of the shader. The first line defines it as a sky shader. Second line adds a texture, and third line adds a float we can use to sample the texture at a given point. That's the texture I've used for my game Sepulchrum. The skyTime variable samples this texture at different x values and it is used to run through the day-night cycle. I made a quick and dirty version for this project by sampling the colors from different parts of the painting and blurring them together. We can sample this texture easily by using the skyTime and sky coordinates in y-axis, but that will cause bending. Can you see the lines? To address that, I'm using a pseudo-random generator and feeding it the x and z coordinates. Then I add the random numbers as offsets to my I direction y. The bending is gone, but you might be asking yourself why I'm using I direction instead of sky coordinates. The reason is purely aesthetic. The fall-off looks better for my current scene. Now let's make the sunset color more vibrant. Sunset defines the height of the belt around the horizon. Sunset C samples the color of the sky texture at the sunset line, and then we get the final color by multiplying them together. On the left we can see the belt only. On the right we are adding the sunset to the sky color. Next step's the moon. Make sure you have a directional light node in your scene. We'll calculate the distance from the sky pixels to the directional light. That will give us a gradient. Clamp that gradient and you will have a circle. Can you see the moon now? It will move when the directional light is rotated. But what if you want to add a texture to your moon? You will need to calculate the texture coordinates based on the light direction, which is the purple vector, and the light rotation axis, which is the x-axis in red. With the cross product, you get the green orthogonal vector. Now you have the red and green or bitangent and tangent vectors to calculate our texture coordinates. As you can see, the tangent vector is the x-axis, cross light direction axis. Bitangent is simply the x-axis. I made it negative to flip the moon texture. And the moon UV coordinates can now be calculated with the dot product between the view vector and the tangents. A slight offset is added to center the texture, and afterwards the UV is multiplied to scale the texture. Don't forget to declare a new sampler 2D and provide a moon texture to your shader. For our next step, we'll define a color for the moon and a modified Gaussian function. The function will ease our effects smoothly. and we'll use that to generate a bright and smooth halo around the moon. Back to where we stopped, we will use the same trick we used to calculate the moon circle, but now we put it into the smoothing function. Then we can push it by using the power function. I commented out another way you can use to generate the halo. Looks more subtle and natural, feel free to experiment with. Clamp, invert and tint. Then it's just a matter of blending all together. Notice the 3.5 to make the moon light up. And there we go. Now let's add the clouds. I made this quick and ugly texture for them. It can be improved, but I'll focus more on the shader part. I direction X, Z over I direction Y will generate a plane. It will work, but by using the power function on I direction Y, we are able to generate a bump in the sky, so it won't look as flat. Then we multiply by any float to scale the texture and add a time variable to make the clouds move slowly. Notice the bump and the movement. Let's light the clouds up. Yet again we use the same trick to calculate our halo. For performance, do it sparingly. Power to make it more dramatic and mix the sunset color to make it match the sky nicely. Tint it as you like and clamp to make the clouds disappear in the distance. You could use a smoothing function for that, but in this case it isn't needed. Now things start to become more challenging as we need to get creative on how to mix our colors. It's something we have to experiment with, and in some cases write custom blending functions. That looks nice, but it's still far from what the painting looks like. Also, the translucency of the clouds should be taken into account when applying the effect. Let's use the alpha channel for that. Those three lines do the following: sample the alpha channel of the cloud texture, calculate the inverse of an alpha range smoothly, then constrict the alpha value between 0.04 and the smooth fade. Finally, the halo is multiplied by a color and the resulting alpha. That is added to the final color. Now, let's make it look a bit more like the painting by simulating paintbrush strokes or blotches. This texture was generated from noise using GIMP and colored similarly to the painting. All we have to do is blend it with the sky somehow. Add another sampler 2D for the texture to calculate the UVs, and using the same formula used for the clouds. Then mix the color blotches. Note that the order of the layers might change the final outcome. To achieve the final result, we still need to add more layers and tweak a lot of things. However, I'm going to show you another trick and skip the tweaking part. The trick is to change the LOD of the texture and using 3 as an example. This can be useful sometimes, especially when layering more clouds. So far we mixed and added layers, but you can also subtract them. Multiplying by very small negative values, the trick used here to darken the clouds. Those are the final additions to make the full shader. A lot of tweaking was done to get it right, so it won't be showcased in this video. On the right, in displaying the final shader, it's just a matter of changing values to get it to look like this. You now have the tools to experiment on your own. And that's it. In the next video I'll show you how the water shader was done. Subscribe to keep up with the series, and take care.